Identify your ideal customer profile as early as possible, even if possible before you start building, and then build towards them. And then find a way to get them to use your products as soon as possible.
John, I'm excited to continue our conversation now to hear your journey as a leader and now being able to CEO of Tackle. Talk to me, how did you get to where you are today?
I ended up in tech pretty early. I actually dropped out of college and got a job in IT in the late 90s, and I had grown up pretty technical, just like as a computer kid, and tech came really naturally to me, and that started my career. And then fast forward a few years, I found myself on the vendor side of business at a big tech company called EMC, and found my way back to school and went to business school, and always with this pursuit of, one, wanting to be an entrepreneur, two, wanting to stay on the front lines of how technology can change the way businesses operate. And I spent a fair amount of time in large tech, helping both, in sales, in technical sales, in professional services, helping customers solve problems. And that was really the part of tech that I loved the most. It wasn't the creation, it was the application of technology, and staying close to customers was really inspiring. I was thinking about starting a cloud migration services company at the time. And one of my career mentors was like, hey, there's a really great opportunity. You should go work for Greenplum and help them scale. And at the time, it made a ton of sense to me. My wife and I had a young family, and I joined the Greenplum team, and that's where I met the founders, co-founders of Tackle. So Dylan and Brian and I came together at that point, and that was where our relationship journey started. And originally with Tackle, I was an investor in Tackle, and then I was on the board and was an active advisor of the company through product market fit. And then I officially joined as CEO in 2018. And there were lots and lots of steps along the way. And when I say I was an investor, I'm not an investor. I wanted to become an investor, and I thought it was a great chance to invest with people that I really enjoyed working with and thought were super smart and had a really interesting idea. So it's like, yeah, this is a place that feels right. And it's a place I feel like maybe I could add some value. And then it just happened to turn into what it's become.
Whether it's in the past 2 years with Tackle or your previous ventures, are there any tactics that you found have worked well for earlier startups, or maybe they're doing fairly well to get their first couple customers and then to be able to scale from there? Any tactics that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, lean startup thinking and just the idea of MVP and how do you build for your target persona. I think that there's a million different ways to execute on that, but just the basics of that thinking, I think, are so important. And a lot of times people will have an idea, but they won't understand who's really going to use it. And they'll spend a fair amount of time trying to build out the idea before they can really answer it can be successful, and people have been successful that way, but oftentimes you will find that there's a big pivot along the way once you get products in the hands of the users. So I would say try to identify your ideal customer profile as early as possible, even if possible before you start building, and then build towards them. And then find a way to get them to use your products as soon as possible. And as I talk to entrepreneurs, whether it's early stage companies or people thinking about going on this journey, I really try to break the customer journey down into, you have the 0 to 1, like 0 product to first customer. That is a very, very distinct problem statement. Then you have the 1 to 10. And in the 1 to 10 phase, you're trying to figure out how repeatable is the solution that you created. Can you get to 10 people using your product the same way? And this is an area where a lot of entrepreneurs fail, because they'll find their 0 to 1, and then they'll find number 2 who wants to do something kind of like what 1 did, but it's not the same. And you want to grow and you want to delight customers. So sometimes you'll say yes to that, when in reality that can be super dangerous. If to get to, then the next phase is going from 10 to 50 and 50 to 100. And like in the 0 to 10, the 1 to 10 phase, that's where you figure out repeatability. In 10 to 50, you start to figure out value. In 50 to 100, you start to figure out scale. In 100 and beyond, it's really optimization.
What kind of challenges do you see you're going to need to overcome, and maybe even others, in order to grow?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we were born and built remote. So from 2016, we've always operated remote. Zoom and Slack make up the backbone of the company, and you have to create very intentional internal communication infrastructure to succeed remote. So we had that in place when the pandemic hit, which we did not design the company that way to avoid a pandemic. It was a like great great use case for the way we were built. But when you look at the business community of cloud, the business community of cloud is centered very heavily on these big events like AWS reInvent and Microsoft Inspire and Microsoft Build, and all these big events are kind of these rallying cries for the SaaS and cloud industry, and those have gone away. And I still don't think anyone knows what a world without reInvent will look like. And everyone's trying to figure it out, and everyone's pivoting towards more digital based engagement. And I think this is going to really help product-led growth companies, because if you're building your product to be consumed easily by your target user persona, then you should be able to continue to grow through these times. And you really have to lean into like that content-based style. How do I build value-added content that will help people engage with the company, understand the problems we can help them solve, and then make it really easy for them to get access to our products. So we've made that pretty hard pivot. We used to spend a lot of time at the big cloud events, and we've shifted full on to a content-based strategy and doing a lot of like online content that delivers value to our customers, and we've seen good success there.
For you as a leader, are any books, podcasts, sites that you frequent or have enjoyed or read in the past?
I'm a huge Jason Lemkin fan from SaaStr. So if you're in SaaS and you want to think about growth, I feel like every time I search a question, I find a Jason Lemkin article. So that's great. And then Bessemer is our lead investor, and they do a lot to publish the State of Cloud report, which is something I've read for years and have always found it super fascinating. So they put out a lot of great content that I really love.
Looking forward in the near term and long term, what kind of technology innovations do you predict we will see? So in the next year or so, and then in 5 or 10 years, what do you think?
I think that movement, as you think about going from 175,000 software companies to 1 billion software companies, everything that's repeatable will be automated with software. And I think that will change the way people work, similar to how like the PC and Microsoft Office changed the way you work. And then you think about the iPhone and everything that the iPhone and smart devices consolidated. Like I think this B2B evolution with software will have a similar kind of shift in the way that people work. And I think another chapter of that's going to be those companies are trying to take that innovation that they use for themselves and apply it to their industries to become software companies. And I think you'll see more traditional enterprises make up some of that 175,000 software companies. And almost the same way that Amazon created AWS. AWS was a service provider for Amazon, and then they brought that to market as a cloud provider. I think you're going to see an acceleration of that as we move further into the digital transformation world.
Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.